Have you ever wondered what happens when a government decides some deaths are not important enough to remember? In this story, Earth sends Helena Cross to a ruined colony called Aster Vale, where the Galactic Council wants to erase the names of the dead from the official record. But one human woman refuses to let grief become silence. And when a sister plays the final voice of someone the Council called unregistered, the entire chamber is forced to listen. The Galactic Council called human grief a security threat at Aster Vale Memorial Plaza. The lights were still being tested when Helena Cross found the first missing name. The plaza stood at the center of Aster Vale, a civilian settlement built along a quiet trade route between Earth relief zones and Galaxy Council territory. 3 weeks earlier, a chain failure in the settlement's shield grid had turned a crowded transit district into broken glass, smoke, and silence. Earth had sent medics, engineers, and record keepers after the fires were out. The Galaxy Council had sent security auditors, legal observers, and a short report. Helena had been sent for a different reason. She was Earth's memorial envoy, trained to stand between disaster and forgetting. Her public role sounded gentle to anyone who had never done it. But in truth, it required a hard mind, a steady voice, and the courage to tell powerful systems that the dead were not a matter of convenience. Her task that morning was simple in wording and heavy in weight. She had to oversee a public remembrance for everyone who had died at Aster Vale. Human dock workers, Earth medics, Vale laborers, council technicians, refugees waiting for transit clearance, civilians whose families had not yet received bodies. Some had full names in Earth records. Some had only final signals, work tags, witness memory, or damaged identification marks. Helena stood in a quiet preparation room beneath the plaza, reading through the list while the wall behind her showed a live view of the memorial ground above. The plaza was broad and pale, paved with silver stone, built around a vertical ring of light called the memory wall. At dusk, the ring would display each name in the language of the dead, then in the shared trade script of the council. No flags, no battle music, no speeches about revenge, only light, silence, and names. Archivist Helena Cross stood beside the table with 2 data slates in her hands. She was smaller than Helena, sharp-eyed, with dark hair cut cleanly at her jaw. Helena had spent the last 12 hours comparing Earth's casualty record with the official council report. She had not slept. Helena looked down at the first slate, then at the second. "Why is the council list shorter?" she asked. Helena did not answer at once. She pressed the slates together, and the table projected 2 columns of names into the air. The Earth column kept going far below the edge of the display. The Council column stopped early. "Because they are not counting every one," Helena said. Helena held her silence. Helena touched the projection. Hundreds of names dimmed at once. Most were Vale. Others were dock laborers from minor systems, temporary medical aides, and refugees who had not yet been granted civic standing in council territory. Civic standing meant official political status under council law. Without it, a person could live, work, suffer, and die in council space, but still be treated as less important in the record. In the council file, those people were not listed as dead. They were marked under a cleaner term: unregistered losses. Helena read the phrase twice. It was not written with cruelty. That made it worse. It looked calm. It looked official. It looked as if a death could be made smaller by choosing a cleaner word. "Who authorized the removal?" Helena asked. "The casualty office says those identities were not confirmed by council standard," Helena replied. "They want us to read only civic casualties. They had names. Earth confirmed some names. Witnesses confirmed others. The council says witness memory is not enough." Witness memory meant a survivor remembered a name, a voice, a final location, or proof that someone had been alive near the disaster. It was not perfect, but after fire, smoke, and broken records, it was often all that remained. Helena glanced toward the live view of the plaza. Workers were placing small white light rods along the outer steps. They had been told to keep them low, no higher than the hand. A memorial, not a rally. A grief that would not be mistaken for a weapon. Helena lowered her voice. "There is more." A new message appeared on the wall. The seal of the Galaxy Council opened like a pale eye. The order was brief. Earth was required to remove all unverified names from the public ceremony. Any attempt to read unapproved casualties would be classified as public pressure against an active council review. If unrest followed, Earth would be held responsible. For a moment, only the hum of the air system filled the room. A younger aide near the door looked from the message to Helena. "Do we read all of them?" he asked. Helena looked at the long column of dim names. Some were complete. Some were fragments. Some were only a sound recorded by a survivor who had been too injured to speak clearly. But each mark had come from someone who had lived, worked, waited, loved, or tried to reach help. "If we know the name," Helena said, "we read the name." The aide swallowed and nodded. Helena turned to the team. "No banners. No chants. No political symbols. No countermessage to the council. No one pushes the security line. Everyone carries one light. Everyone stands still." She looked back at the dim names. "If they want to call grief a threat, we give them nothing but grief." Lena looked at her for a long second. "They will say you are provoking them." "They already did," Helena said. Above them, in the plaza, the memory wall brightened as the first test name appeared in white light. It stayed for 3 seconds, then faded gently into the stone. Helena watched it disappear. "Set the full list," she said. By the time the first mourners arrived, Helena had moved from the preparation room to the memorial level. The work below had become visible above, and the list was no longer just data on a table. It was now thousands of people standing beneath the memory wall, waiting to learn who would be allowed to exist in the public record. Council security had already blocked 3 of the plaza entrances. Marshal Irondax stood at the north gate, a tall council officer with a narrow face and armor polished so cleanly it reflected the memorial lights. He was not loud. That made him more difficult. He spoke like a man who believed order was mercy, even when order stepped on someone's throat. Helena met him beside the security line, where Earth volunteers were guiding families toward the open paths. "Marshal Dax," she said, "this is a memorial site. Your barriers are too close." Dax looked past her at the people gathering in the plaza. Humans stood among Vari survivors, gray-skinned Thalen dockers, blue-robed medical aides from Voss Reach, and quiet refugees from ships stranded during the shield failure. Each person held one small light rod. No one shouted. No one pushed. The only sound was low conversation and the soft instruction of Earth staff. "The Council has classified this plaza as a potential civil unrest zone," Dax said. Helena kept her voice even. "On what grounds?" "Population density, emotional volatility, cross-species grievance, and the presence of unapproved casualty names. They are mourners. They are a crowd. Those are not the same thing." "They become the same thing often enough," Dax said. Helena studied him. She had read his file on the shuttle. Dax had been posted to 3 worlds where memorial assemblies had turned into uprisings. He had watched grief become fire. He had built a career out of preventing the first spark. That did not make him evil. It made him dangerous in a different way. He had seen one kind of pain too often, and now he believed all pain moved in the same direction. "This ceremony has rules," Helena said. "No weapons. No eslogans. No procession beyond the plaza. No demand chants. The list will be read. The lights will be lowered. Then everyone goes home." Dax's eyes flicked toward the memory wall. "The unapproved names will not be read. They died at Aster Vale. They have not been verified as civic casualties. Civic standing is not a pulse." His expression tightened, just enough for her to notice. Envoy Cross. "The Council does not forbid mourning. It forbids manipulation. Remembering the dead is not manipulation. It can become one. It becomes one when power decides which dead are safe to remember." Dax looked back at her, and for the first time, there was something close to warning in his face. "I advise caution," he said. "So do I," Helena replied. "You should be careful what you call a threat." The exchange was captured by 3 local media drones before Earth staff moved them back. Within an hour, the clip had been cut, sharpened, and thrown across council networks under a headline Helena saw on a wall display in the operations room. Human grief event challenges council authority. By mid-afternoon, Councillor Varesh Noel had appeared on every major political channel. Varesh was not a security officer. He was worse. He understood fear as a tool. He was a polished council politician with a pale, angular face, silver robes, and a voice that could make accusations sound like reason. His party had pushed for tighter control over post-disaster gatherings across mixed territories, and Aster Vale gave him the stage he wanted. The issue is not whether humans are allowed to grieve, Varesh said in one broadcast. The issue is whether Earth may gather a multi-species crowd, display disputed casualty names, and use mourning as organized pressure against council review. Humanity has a troubling habit of converting emotion into political leverage. Helena watched the statement once and stopped the feed. Elias Vorn, Earth's senior diplomatic advisor at Aster Vale, stood across the table with both hands clasped behind his back. He had the careful posture of a man trying not to look afraid. He's building a case before the hearing exists, Elias said. There is no hearing, Helena replied. There will be if you read the full list. Lena Mar stood near the wall, silently adding new witness records to the Earth archive. Tomas Reed, the Earth transmission technician, was checking the plaza's public audio grid. Council technicians had already warned Tomas twice that the broadcast link might be restricted if the ceremony became unlawful. Helena turned to Elias. Say what you came to say. Elias exhaled slowly. Cut the disputed names from the public reading. Keep them in the private record. We can challenge the council report later. No, Helena, no. Earth has relief agreements across 9 council corridors. If Varesh wins the narrative, those agreements freeze. We could lose access to disaster zones where people are still alive. You're defending the dead today, but the living will pay tomorrow if Earth gets locked out. That landed. Helena let it land. She had spent her career protecting records, names, witness testimony, and memorial rights. Elias had spent his career keeping doors open for Earth medics and rescue crews. Neither of them was careless. Neither of them wanted to lose. We are not choosing between the dead and the living, Helena said. Sometimes systems force that choice. Then the system is wrong. And if the wrong system controls the gates? Helena looked toward the wall display. Outside, the plaza was filling slowly. A human woman helped an elderly alien adjust the small light in his hand. A Vayari survivor stood apart from the others, her head bowed beneath a thin gray hood. Those people already paid the price for someone else's careful language, Helena said. Unregistered loss. Non civi casualty. Statistical remainder. If we accept those words today, they will use them again. Elias softened, but only slightly. I'm asking you to keep Earth in the room. I am keeping Earth worth listening to. Before Elias could answer, the door opened. A Vayari woman entered with 2 Earth volunteers behind her. She was tall and fragile in the way of her species, with long limbs, translucent amber-gray skin, and 4 narrow eyes that blinked one pair at a time. The Vayari did not resemble humans. Their faces were smooth, with small breathing slits along the jaw instead of a nose, and their voices carried a soft rasp like wind through paper. Fine tendrils fell from the back of the woman's head in place of hair, each marked with faint blue memory beads. The woman held a wrapped object against her chest. The volunteers stopped at the door. The Vayari came forward alone. My name is Mara Solon, she said. Helena stepped toward her. I know. Your community leader said you might come. I'm not a leader. Mara's 4 eyes moved from Helena to Elias, then to Lena Mar. Leaders have standing. I have memory. She placed the wrapped object on the table. Inside was a small recorder, cracked at one edge, its surface darkened by heat. Beside it lay a strip of thin material covered in marks written by hand. Some are Vayari glyphs. Some are rough trade script. Some are only sound shapes. My sister worked near the East Transit Lock, Mara said. Her name was Roland Solon. She called me when the shield failed. Mara touched the recorder with 2 long fingers. I recorded the call because I could not understand her through the alarms. After the line died, other survivors told me names. Some I knew. Some I only heard once. Some I do not know how to spell in your language. Lena moved closer, her face changing as she saw the length of the strip. Mara kept her hands on the table. Council record says my sister is an unregistered loss. It says my mother is unregistered. It says my neighbor's mate is unregistered. It says 31 Vayari from our housing row are not civic casualties. Her voice trembled, but she did not lower it. If they are not dead in the record, then no one is responsible for the doors that failed. No one spoke. That was the simple truth behind the clean word. If a person was only an unregistered loss, the council did not have to count the death in the same way. It did not have to reopen the same questions. It did not have to admit the same duty. Mara looked at Helena. I was told not to come. If I speak, my people may lose housing status. They may say we are causing unrest. Helena's answer came quietly. A name should never have to beg for permission to be remembered. Mara closed two of her eyes. The other two stayed open, wet with a thin silver film. Then read them, she said, even the broken ones. Helena looked at the strip of names, then at Elias. He said nothing. Outside, the plaza lights rose another level, warm and steady in the late day. Before Mara left the room, Helena asked her to stay for one more question. Who else knows these names? Helena asked. Mara looked down at the strip of handmark material. Some survivors. Not all. The Vayari do not keep memory in one place. We carry pieces. A name with one family. A work sound with another. A final location with someone who is close enough to hear. Then we need the pieces, Helena said. Elias shifted. Helena, every new testimony makes this more visible. Good. Visibility is exactly what Varesh wants to accuse us of creating. Helena faced him. No, he wants visibility without control. He wants fear, disorder, and anger. We will show witness memory. There is a difference. Mara watched the exchange with all four eyes open. If Vayari speak, she said, Council may say we repeat each other to gain standing. Then Earth will not ask for speeches, Helena said. We will ask for specific things. Names, final places, work bands, last sounds, people seen together. If a memory is uncertain, we mark it uncertain. We do not make it cleaner than it is. Lena nodded immediately. That helps. Council records thrive on claiming witness memory is emotional. Specific memory is harder to dismiss. Mara touched the recorder again. Some will be afraid. They should be, Helena said. Fear is not shameful. But if they choose to speak, we protect their testimony and their status as far as Earth can. If they choose silence, we do not punish them for surviving. That was when Elias's expression changed. He had been arguing against Helena's course because he saw only a confrontation with the council. Now he saw the other side of it. Helena was not building a riot. She was building a record. I'll request emergency witness protection language from the Earth delegation, he said. Helena looked at him. Elias gave a small, tired shrug. If we're doing this, we do it correctly. For the next few hours, the preparation room became something between an archive office and a quiet shelter. Vayari survivors came in pairs or small groups. Some were too afraid to sit. Some refused to give full names, offering only work rows, shelter numbers, or final voice marks. Lena never pushed them. She asked the same steady questions each time. Who did you see? Where were they? What did they carry? Did anyone hear their final signal? Can another witness confirm part of this? A final signal could be a call, a recording, a last, location ping, or any trace showing that a person had lived and died there. To the council, it was often incomplete data. To a family, it could be the last proof that someone had not vanished into silence. Helena listened more than she spoke. That was part of her work too. A memorial envoy did not own grief. She made room for it to become something that could survive a system's attempt to flatten it. One old Vayari man gave no names at first. He only placed 3 broken work bands on the table. His hands were long and jointed, each finger wrapped in ash-colored thread. They were my row, he said. I cannot say the sounds right. My mouth was damaged by smoke. Lena started to tell him that was all right, but Helena lifted one hand gently. She had learned that comfort offered too quickly could sound like dismissal. Can you show us how the names were marked at work? Helena asked. The old man tapped the bands in sequence. 3 patterns appeared as faint burned ridges. Lena scanned them. These correspond to labor tags, not in the council casualty file. The old man bowed his head. Then they were real enough to be paid. Not real enough to be dead. No one in the room answered because the sentence needed no help. A human medic arrived next with a sealed bag of patient patches. She had treated casualties in the first hour after the shield failure and had written temporary names on emergency tags when translation systems failed. Council auditors told me to discard these because they were not official identifiers, she said. I could not do it. Helena looked at the bag. Why bring them now? The medic's face tightened. Because one of them held my wrist while she died. She kept repeating a sound. I thought it was pain. Later, a Vayari nurse told me it was her name. Lena took the bag with both hands. By late afternoon, the Earth list had changed shape. It was no longer only a list of clean names and unknown entries. It had become a layered record. Some entries had full names. Some had witness names. Some had final signals. Some had objects linked to last known location. Some were marked as partial, but protected from erasure. Helena insisted on those words. Protected from erasure. Not confirmed. Not finalized. Not politically useful. Protected. Tomas built a backup archive packet that could be transmitted in pieces if the council blocked the main feed. He hated legal language, but he understood damaged signals. He designed a file like a rescue beacon, redundant and stubborn. If one channel failed, the next carried enough to keep the record alive. It is ugly, he told Helena. Ugly is fine. Will it hold? It will hold longer than they want it to. Elias returned with conditional witness protection language from Earth. It was not as strong as he wanted, but it placed Earth formally on record. Any witness who gave testimony to Earth could not be treated by Earth as a destabilizing actor or handed over without review. The council would hate it. That was part of the point. Helena read it once and approved it. You're making the room smaller for compromise, Elias said. No, Helena replied. I'm making the floor visible. If we compromise after that, at least we know what we are standing on. Above them, the plaza continued to fill. The settlement's artificial sky dimmed toward evening. The memory wall's silver ring reflected thousands of small lights waiting to be raised. Then another message came through from Varesh's office. It was not an order. It was an offer. Elias read it first and went very still. What is it? Helena asked. He handed her the slate. The offer was written in polite council language. Earth could proceed with the ceremony if the event was reclassified as a private mourning observance rather than a public memorial. The memory wall would remain dim. There would be no external broadcast, and no unverified names would be spoken through amplification. Earth could submit disputed entries later through proper channels. In exchange, the council would lift the security threat designation and allow the crowd to remain. Lena read over Helena's shoulder. They want the people quiet enough to photograph and silent enough not to matter, she said. Tomas muttered something under his breath. Elias folded his arms. It is a trap, but a clever one. If you reject it, Varesh says Earth chose confrontation over mourning. If you accept it, the names never reach public record before closure. Mara had stayed near the back of the room. She was holding the blue memory beads at the ends of her tendrils, moving them one by one between her fingers. In my language, she said, there's a word for a grave with no marker. It means a place where the living are trained to walk past. Helena looked at the offer again. We reject it. Elias did not argue this time. On what wording? Helena set the slate down. Earth will not downgrade a public record of death into a private comfort ritual to preserve administrative calm. The ceremony remains public. The names remain audible. The crowd remains peaceful. Tomas smiled faintly. That will annoy them. Good, Lena said. Annoyance means they read it. The rejection went out. Minutes later, council security tightened the plaza perimeter. The line between mourning and accusation grew thinner. Helena knew Varesh wanted her to cross it. He needed one moment of disorder so he could say the memorial was dangerous. If the memorial became a security threat, the council would have reason to freeze the record. If the record froze before the names were public, investigation, compensation, and liability could be avoided. He wanted anger, because anger could be shown without context. He wanted panic, because panic could be clipped. He wanted one human voice to shout the wrong sentence into a public channel, one thrown object, one surge against a barrier, one moment that made grief look like a weapon. So Helena made grief slower. She ordered more water stations opened. She sent Earth volunteers into the crowd with translation tags, so no rumor could spread in only one language. She asked Vale elders to stand near the outer rings, not to lead chants, but to help people breathe when names became too much. She told human families that if someone fainted or cried out, they were to lower their lights, not raise their voices. The discipline of the plaza became its own kind of defiance. Not dramatic, not loud, but hard to break. Masai Dax noticed. He came to Helena again near the west access path, with a memory wall threw pale light across his armor. You are organizing them well, he said. That is not a crime. No, but it is power. So, is your barrier? Dax looked toward the seated families. Counselor Knoll believes you want a confrontation. Counselor Knoll needs one. For the first time, Dax did not correct her. Helena saw a tiredness behind his eyes. He had come prepared for disorder, but each hour of quiet took away the certainty that made his job simple. Marshal, she said, you have seen grief become violence. I believe you, but you're about to see what happens when grief is given a lawful place to stand. Do not mistake that for weakness. Dax's jaw tightened. If the crowd breaks the line, I will act. If the crowd breaks the line, I will help you stop it. He looked at her sharply. I told you, Helena said. This is not a rebellion. Dax left without answering. By evening, the council's warning became a deadline. Civil stability closure. The phrase arrived inside a legal packet from the council's crisis office. It was framed as a standard procedure, meant to prevent rumor, panic, and disorder after large disasters. But in practice, it meant the casualty report for Aster Vale would be sealed. Once sealed, any person not verified under Council Civic Standard would remain outside the main death count until a later review. Later review, in Council practice, meant never unless a powerful member demanded it. The closure would activate in 24 hours. Lena Mar read the order aloud in the operations room, then stopped before the final paragraph. Her face had gone pale. If it locks, she said, the Vale names are gone from the main record. Not gone from ours, Tomas Reed said from the transmission console. Lena shook her head. Earth records do not control council liability. Families cannot petition from our archive. Communities cannot request investigation from our archive. Relief funds, housing protection, accountability review, all of it follows the council file. Elias Vorn leaned against the far wall, staring at the floor. So the ceremony is not symbolic, Helena said. No, Lena replied. It is evidence before closure. That changed the weight of the room. Helena had known. The memorial mattered. She had not known the clock was that short. If Earth read the full list before closure, the names would exist in public record. The council could dispute them, delay them, and challenge them, but not erase them quietly. If Earth waited, Varesh would lock the report and call any later challenge politically motivated grief. Tomas turned from the console. The council tech office is limiting external broadcast access. They say it is for signal safety. Can you keep a line open? Helena asked. I can keep 3. 1 public, 1 Earth relay, 1 emergency legal archive. Do it. He nodded. Elias looked up. Helena, if you force the issue now, Varesh will say you knew the procedure and stage the memorial to defeat it. He would be right. That is not a defense. It is if the procedure is being used to bury people. Elias rubbed a hand over his face. I am not your enemy. I know. Then hear me. If the plaza becomes unstable, even for a minute, Varesh wins. Dax will shut it down. The council will call the closure necessary. Earth will be blamed for turning grief into civil pressure. Helena turned toward the live feed. More people had arrived. Hundreds now. Soon thousands. The light rods made the plaza look like a field of low stars. The crowd had remained quiet, but quiet crowds could still be frightened. All Varesh needed was a shove, a rumor, a sharp sound, a panic at one gate. Then we do not give him a minute, Helena said. She went up to the plaza before the final test of the memory wall. The air above Aster Vale was clear, washed gold by the dying light of the settlement's artificial sky band. The Memorial Plaza sat between the damaged transit district and the council administrative tower. It had been chosen because it was neutral ground. Now it felt like a line drawn between two versions of civilization. On one side stood mourners with light rods. On the other stood council security in quiet ranks. Media drones hovered above the approved perimeter. Earth volunteers moved through the crowd, speaking softly, reminding everyone of the rules. No pushing, no chanting, no signs, no raised fists, no response to provocation. If security, tighten the line, step back. If a feed drone came close, stay silent. If anyone shouted for revenge, sit down. Grief would be disciplined or would be used against them. Helena climbed the low central platform. She did not activate the full speaker grid. She used a short-range channel for those present. "My name is Helena Cross," she said. "I am here for Earth, and I am here for every family that came to Aster Vale with a name." The crowd slowly turned toward her. "The council has warned us that grief can become unrest. They're not entirely wrong. Pain can become many things. It can become rage. It can become fear. It can become a wound that never closes. That is why this memorial has rules." Marshal Dax watched from the north gate. Helena continued, "We will not shout. We will not break the line. We will not threaten anyone. We will not use the dead to ask for revenge. This day, we will do one thing. We will remember." A low sound moved through the crowd. Not cheering. Breath. If someone near you begins to panic, help them sit. If someone tries to start a chant, do not join. If someone tells you anger is the only way to honor the dead, remember that the dead have already had enough violence done around them. She paused. "We are not here to make the council afraid of us. We are here to make sure no one is buried twice. Once in the ground, and once in the record." At the edge of the plaza, Marisolin stood with other Veari survivors. Her hands were closed around a small light. Helena stepped down. For a while it worked. Then, 1 hour before the ceremony, the rumor hit the crowd. It spread from the southern gate, where the media drones were thickest. Someone shouted that Earth had agreed to remove the Veari names. Someone else shouted that council security would seize any survivor who tried to speak. A group near the steps surged sideways, not in attack, but in fear. A light rod fell and cracked. An old Veari stumbled. A human medic caught him before he hit the stone. Council security shifted forward. Marshal Dax raised one hand. Helena saw the trap before the first warning tone sounded. Tomas's voice came through her earpiece. "Helena, Council. Channels are flagging crowd movement. Varesh's office just requested emergency intervention authority." "Of course they did," she said. She climbed back onto the platform, this time activating the full plaza channel. "Sit down," she said. The words were not loud, but they cut through the panic because they were calm. Earth volunteers repeated her order in 4 languages. "Sit down. Keep your lights low. Help the person next to you." The crowd wavered. Helena lowered herself onto the platform step. One by one, the people closest to her sat. Then the next ring. Then the next. Within 90 seconds, the surge became a seated crowd holding lights at chest height. The cracked light rod on the ground still glowed. The old Veari was seated safely between 2 strangers. Council security had no charge, no riot, no broken line. Only a plaza full of mourners who had chosen stillness. Marshal Dax lowered his hand. Helena looked toward the media drones and said nothing. Sometimes silence was the strongest record. Varesh Knoll still made his move. The summons arrived before the ceremony could begin. Helena Cross was ordered to appear before an emergency chamber of the Galaxy Council to answer charges that Earth had created a public security threat at Aster Vale. The memorial was not officially canceled, but Council authority ordered all name readings paused until the chamber reviewed the matter. The timing was the point. Civil stability closure would activate in a few hours. If Helena spent those hours trapped in procedure, the names would vanish in a sealed language. Mara would lose her chance to speak before the record closed, and Rollin Solon would remain an unregistered loss. Elias Vorn read the summons in the operations room and looked older than he had that morning. They chose the chamber, he said, not the security office. Varesh wants a public record. Then we give him one, Helena replied. Lena Mar placed a data case on the table. Earth list, council list, witness memory file, signal records, casualty edits, the cut footage from the plaza, and the full footage. Tomas Reed held up a small transmitter no larger than his palm. Emergency legal relay. If they block the public feed, I can push through the Earth Archive channel. It will not be pretty, but it will hold. Helena took the transmitter. Mara stood near the door, silent beneath her gray hood. Her tendrils were threaded with blue memory beads that clicked softly when she moved. You do not have to come, Helena told her. I know. If you come, they may attack your standing. They already did. If you speak, they may call your memory unreliable. Mara touched the small recorder against her chest. Then I will let my sister speak first. Helena nodded once. Mara was not coming as a symbol. She was coming as a witness, and as a sister carrying the last proof that Roland Solon had been alive. Elias approached before they left. His voice was low enough that the others could not hear. I still think this could cost us. It will. That does not frighten you? It does, Helena said. But I am more frightened of teaching them that Earth will cut names when pressure gets high enough. Elias looked at her with weary respect. Then do not let Varesh make you angry. He will try. He is good at it. I'm better at being quiet. The path from the plaza to the emergency chamber ran through the lower ring of the council administrative tower. Outside, the mourners remained seated, waiting beneath the blank memory wall. Helena knew every minute mattered now. The council did not need to defeat her in the chamber if it could hold her there long enough for civil stability closure to lock the file. The emergency chamber of the Galaxy Council was a circular hall built for fast rulings and public warnings. It was smaller than the full assembly chamber, but it felt colder. White stone, silver panels, a ceiling that reflected every face downward. Seats rose in tiers around a central floor where witnesses stood with no table to hide behind. Magistrate Corvin L. presided from the highest seat. He was old by a species measure, with deep blue skin and a mane of fine white spines folded back from his skull. His voice carried the weight of someone who preferred procedure to passion. Counselor Varesh Knoll stood to the right of the chamber floor, dressed in silver robes that caught the overhead light like polished glass. Helena stood alone in the center. Behind her, in the observer section, Mara sat with Lena, Tomas, and Elias. Marshal Dax stood near the chamber entrance, his face unreadable. The public feed activated. Not all of it, Helena noticed. The council had opened their official stream, but Tomas's emergency relay light glowed faintly in her sleeve. Magistrate AEL began. Envoy Helena Cross of Earth. This chamber has been convened to review whether the gathering at Aster Vale Memorial Plaza constitutes a public security threat under council crisis law. You are the responsible Earth official for the event. I am, Helena said. You were ordered to remove unverified casualty names from the ceremony. Yes. You declined. Yes. AEL studied her. You do not contest the facts. No. Varesh stepped forward, his expression almost gentle. That is refreshing. Then perhaps this will be brief. Helena did not answer. Varesh turned to the chamber. The council is not here to insult human grief. We are here because history has taught us that mass grief becomes mass movement, and mass movement becomes collapse. Envoy Cross gathered a multi-species crowd at a politically sensitive site. She planned to read disputed names before closure of an active casualty review. She knew those names would inflame public anger. An active casualty review meant the official death record was still open, but only under council control. If the council closed it before the names entered public record, those names could be pushed outside the legal file. Varesh lifted one hand. A short recording appeared above the chamber floor. It showed the crowd surge at the southern gate. People shouting, a light rod falling, security stepping forward. Here is the result, Varesh said. Earth claims discipline. Reality shows volatility. He let the clipped recording end at the worst moment. The chamber murmured. Varesh looked at Helena. Do you deny that your memorial nearly became a civil incident? Yes, Helena said. You deny what we just saw? I deny your ending. A faint shift moved through the chamber. Helena turned toward Magistrate E.L. I request the full recording from the same feed. Varesh smiled. The relevant section has been provided. No, Helena said. The useful section has been provided. AEL looked to the technical clerk. Play the full sequence. Varesh's face did not change, but his eyes hardened. The recording restarted. This time, the chamber saw the rumor spread. It saw people panic, not attack. It saw council security step forward before any line was breached. It saw Helena climb the platform and sit down first. It saw Earth volunteers repeat the instruction. Then it saw thousands of mourners lower themselves to the stone in silence. Lights held close until the plaza became still. The recording continued long past the moment Varesh had cut. No riot, no chant, no strike against the security line. Only grief brought under control by the people accused of weaponizing it. When the feed ended, the chamber was quiet. Helena let that quiet stay. Then she spoke. That is what human grief did when fear entered the crowd. It sat down. No one in the chamber moved. AL leaned back slightly. Varesh recovered quickly. The disciplined crowd can still be political pressure. Everything before this chamber is political pressure, Helena replied. The question is whether it is false. Varesh's voice cooled. The issue remains the same. Earth intended to read names not verified by council standard. Correct. Knowing the civil stability closure was pending. Correct. Knowing that public naming could force liability questions before review was complete. Knowing it could prevent those questions from being buried, Helena said. Varesh gave the chamber a measured look. There. You hear it. Earth admits the memorial is not neutral. It is an intervention. Helena turned toward AL. Yes. It is an intervention against erasure. Magistrate PL raised one hand to stop the exchange. Envoy Cross. The council must maintain disaster order. You may grieve. You may memorialize confirmed casualties. But if every witness memory, damaged token, or final signal is treated as official death record, the system cannot function. Helena's voice softened. Then perhaps the system needs to learn the difference between uncertainty and inconvenience. Il's gaze sharpened. Helena lifted her wrist and opened a live feed. The central air above the chamber filled with the image of Aster Vale, Memorial Plaza. The chamber saw thousands of lights. The mourners were still seated. Humans and aliens together. No flags. No weapons. No raised signs. Security lines still stood at the edges, but the plaza itself was quiet. The memory wall waited, blank and tall. Helena said, "This is what the council called a threat." She signaled Tomas through the relay. At the plaza, the memory wall brightened. A calm Earth voice began to read. Anika Rowe, Earth Medic. Final signal confirmed at Transit Shelter 7. The name appeared in white. Then it faded. Vesh Talon. Voss Reach Medical Aid. Witness confirmed. Another name appeared. Surumon. Dukverker. Identification band recovered. Another light. Uringdus. Council Maintenance Technician. Final position confirmed. Varesh turned sharply. Magistrate, this is an unauthorized continuation of a paused event. L's hand hovered over the command panel, but he did not bring it down. The reading continued. Helena did not look away from the chamber. They are not being read by species rank, she said. Not by political standing. Not by council value. They are being read in the order their final signals were confirmed. A new name appeared. Roland Solon. Vayari Housing Row East. Witness memory confirmed. Varesh seized the moment. Stop the feed. That name is unverified. The wall in the live image held the name. In the observer section, Mara rose. Helena turned to her, not to command her, only to see if she chose it. Mara stepped forward. AEL looked at her. Identify yourself. My name is Mara Solon, she said. Vayari survivor of Aster Vale. Roland Solon was my sister. Varesh spoke sharply. Witness memory alone cannot establish civic casualty status. Mara lifted the cracked recorder. Her 4 eyes opened fully. Then hear her. The chamber audio accepted the file. Static came first, then alarms, then a voice, thin and strained, speaking in Vayari. The chamber translation lagged by a heartbeat. Mara, if this reaches you, Eastlock failed. We are under the lower rail. Roland Solon. I am with Tavi, Auras, Nim, and 3 I do not know. Tell them we waited. Tell them we were here. The file ended. Mara's hand trembled, but she stayed standing. The council says she is unregistered, Mara said. But she knew her name when she died. The chamber went still. This was no longer a dispute about a category. It was a dead woman speaking through the last piece of herself that survived. Helena let the silence breathe. She let the room feel the difference between a disputed entry and a sister's last voice. Then she opened the data case. Hundreds of names were removed from the Aster Vale report, she said. Not because the council had no evidence. Because evidence from people without civic standing was marked insufficient by default. She released the first document into the chamber display. A casualty edit log appeared. Names moved from pending confirmation to unregistered loss. Beside each change was a reason code. No civic standing. No council-recognized family claimant. Temporary labor status. Refugee clearance incomplete. Lena Mars cross-checks appeared next. Earth medical tags. Doklux. Shelter sensor records. Final signal pings. Personal items recovered from marked locations. Witness statements from survivors who had no formal standing but had eyes, ears, memory, and grief. Varesh spoke over the rising murmur. None of this proves wrongdoing. It proves a complex disaster record under active review. Helena opened the final file. Civil stability closure. Internal advisory chain. Public unrest forecast. Liability exposure if casualty numbers increased. Recommendation to seal unverified categories before memorial activity. Liability exposure meant the council knew more names could bring investigation, compensation, and legal responsibility. It was the language of risk, not mourning. Helena did not accuse. She let the words show themselves. AEL read in silence. The chamber read with him. Varesh's face hardened. Helena looked at the counselor. Which part is unverified? She asked. Their death, or your willingness to count it. Varesh took one step forward. You speak as if grief gives Earth authority. Over council records. No, Helena said. Grief gives no one authority. It gives us responsibility. Responsibility without order becomes chaos. Order without memory becomes burial. These categories exist to prevent false claims. And today they were used to prevent true ones. Varesh turned to the chamber tiers. If this standard is accepted, every disaster in council space becomes vulnerable to emotional challenge. Every witness with a memory becomes a legal threat. Every mourning crowd becomes a political instrument. His mistake came in the next sentence. Do you not see? If all these names are admitted, the Aster Vale response must be reopened. Relief delays must be investigated. Compensation will expand. Administrative officers will be exposed to claims from populations that were never granted civic standing. He stopped too late. Helena did not need to answer. The chamber had heard it. The room changed then. Not loudly. Not with outrage. It changed the way a locked door changes when someone hears the mechanism fail. The issue had never been security alone. It had never been only the stability of the plaza, or the shape of human mourning, or the fear that grief would become violence. It was responsibility. It was the cost of counting everyone. Magistrate Hill looked down from the high seat. Counselor Knoll, he said slowly, are you arguing that the names should be excluded to avoid liability? Varesh's eyes flashed. I am arguing that premature inclusion destabilizes post-disaster governance. That was not my question. Varesh said nothing. From the live feed, the reading continued. Nemvel. Vayari temporary housing. Witness memory and final shelter ping confirmed. The name appeared on the memory wall. Then another. And another. The crowd in the plaza remained seated. Some bowed their heads. Some held lights higher when a name they knew was read. No one shouted. No one rushed the security line. Even the council guards seemed uncertain now, as if they had been sent to contain a riot and found themselves guarding a prayer they were not trained to understand. Mara spoke again. "My people do not ask the council to make our dead important," she said. "They were already important. We asked the council to stop making them convenient." Her words entered the chamber gently. They struck harder because of it. Helena looked toward the live wall, where the names kept rising and fading. "When humans gather like this," she said, "we are not worshiping war. We are not feeding revenge. We are making a promise that loss will not be cleaned until it disappears." She turned back to Ael. "Earth does not ask the council to accept every rumor as record. We ask for a rule that no verified name, witness memory, final signal, or physical evidence may be excluded because the person lacked political status." Ael looked at the legal clerks below him. They were already speaking in urgent whispers. Varesh saw the direction of the room and tried one final route. "If the council yields under a live memorial, every future crowd will learn that public grief can force policy." Helena answered quietly. "Then let them also learn what this crowd did. It did not break a wall. It did not raise a weapon. It did not call for blood. It stood still long enough for the powerful to hear the names they wanted to skip." Ael closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, the decision had settled over his face. This chamber orders immediate suspension of civil stability closure for the Aster Vale disaster record. The casualty report will be reopened under expanded evidentiary review. Expanded evidentiary review meant the council could no longer rely only on civic status. It had to consider physical evidence, final signals, and witness memory before removing a person from the active record. Ael continued, "Any identity supported by physical evidence, final signal, or witness memory shall be preserved in active record until review is complete. No protected community, including the Vayari, may face removal, housing penalty, or status retaliation for participation in testimony." Varesh turned toward him. "Magistrate, that exceeds emergency scope." "It preserves emergency scope," Ael said. "If the council's stability depends on excluding the dead before they can be counted, then the instability is already within the council." The words did not sound emotional. They sounded procedural. That made them devastating. The live feed showed the memory wall still reading. For the first time all day, Marshal Irondax stepped away from the North Gate and lowered the security barrier by one level. Not fully. He was still a council officer, but enough that the mourners closest to the line could breathe without facing a wall of armor. Helena saw it on the feed. She did not smile. A win in a chamber did not bring back the dead. It did not undo the hours when families were told their loved ones were unregistered. It did not erase the fear in Mara's voice when she said her sister knew her name. But it kept the names alive in the only place power had tried to kill them a second time. There was one more consequence Helena had not expected. After the emergency order, messages began reaching the chamber from worlds that had no delegates present. They came through minor civic channels first, then through relief networks, then through private family archives that had never been invited into council law. Some are only questions. Some are lists. Some are frightened requests asking whether witness memory would be enough if no body had been recovered. Tomas routed them into a holding file so they would not interrupt the hearing, but the count kept rising on his display. 27 messages. 61. 112. Elias saw the number and went quiet. Lena saw it and covered her mouth with one hand. Helena did not look at the chamber tears. She knew Varesh was seeing it too. This was what he had feared. Not a riot, not a mob, not a wave of human revenge. A record spreading. The grief of Aster Vale had given other communities permission to ask why their own missing dead had been made administratively quiet. The question moved faster than anger because it did not need a slogan. It needed only one person in one distant settlement to say, "We have names too." Magistrate Ael ordered the incoming material sealed into a separate preliminary queue pending later jurisdiction. He did it carefully, with enough limits to protect the hearing and enough openness to keep the council from pretending the messages had not arrived. Helena understood the importance of that balance. A reckless victory could collapse under its own weight. A disciplined one could keep moving after the room, try to stop it. For the first time, she allowed herself one small breath of relief. Not because the fight was over, because the names had begun to travel. Before AEL could close the hearing, Helena asked for one more item to be placed into the emergency record. AEL looked weary now, but not dismissive. What item? Helena lifted the small transmitter Tomas had given her. A preservation order for the raw Aster Vale Memorial Archive. The full feed, the full list, the full witness packet, and the full council casualty edit log. No summarizing office. No political review before preservation. The raw archive meant the original evidence before any office softened it, shortened it, summarized it, or removed the parts that made power uncomfortable. Varesh, move at once. That is excessive. Raw grief material contains private pain, unstable testimony, and incomplete identifications. It should be processed by council archivists before entry. Helena had expected that word. Processed. It was the soft cousin of erased. She turned to AEL. Magistrate, every person in that plaza was told the ceremony was public. Every witness who submitted to Earth was told their evidence could enter record. The only people asking to delay preservation are the same offices that removed names before the hearing. AEL did not answer immediately. The chamber clerks looked among themselves. Elias leaned forward in the observer row, suddenly alert. Lena's hand tightened around her data case. Varesh spoke again, smoother this time. No one is suggesting removal. Only review. A civilized system does not dump raw anguish in a law. Helena faced him. A civilized system does not demand custody of the only evidence that can prove it lied. The chamber air changed. It was a dangerous sentence, but it was no longer unsupported. The edit logs floated above them. The live feed still showed names appearing in the plaza. The recording of Roland Solin's final voice had already entered the chamber record. Varesh could not pretend Helena was making an emotional claim without evidence. Magistrate AEL looked at the legal clerks again. Preserve the raw archive, he ordered. Access restrictions may be reviewed later. The material itself will not be altered, summarized, or sealed by any office named in the current casualty dispute. For the first time that day, Varesh lost control of his expression. It was not rage. It was calculation interrupted. Helena understood then that this had been his last shield. If the raw archive went into protected record, the missing names could no longer be reduced to a debate about public mood. The evidence would outlive the chamber, the headlines, and Varesh's phrasing. Tomas's relay light flashed twice. The archive had received the order. Lena closed her eyes for one breath. Mara's tendrils moved slowly, bead by bead, as if she was counting the moment into memory. AEL addressed Helena once more. Envoy Cross, do you understand that this ruling does not validate every disputed name today? Yes, Helena said. It keeps them from being erased before they can be heard. And does Earth accept the burden of submitting each disputed identity through expanded review? Earth accepts the burden, even when the record remains painful. Helena looked at the live feed. The memory wall was displaying a partial entry now. A shelter voice, unidentified, last heard singing to keep others awake. Especially then, she said. The hearing moved into procedural language after that. It could have felt small after the moral force of the testimony, but Helena knew better. Systems did not change only in moments of silence. They changed when silence was forced into wording, procedure, custody, and review. They changed when a principle became too specific to ignore. AEL made the clerks read the emergency order aloud. Every phrase mattered. Civil stability closure was suspended for Aster Vale. The casualty file remained open. Witness memory could preserve an identity pending review. Final signals could preserve an identity pending review. Physical evidence could preserve an identity pending review. No population could be penalized for contributing testimony. No office under inquiry could alter the raw. Archife. The clauses sounded dry. To the Veari, they sounded like doors unlocking. Mara listened with her head bowed. When the clerk finished, she whispered something in her own language. The chamber translator rendered it softly. Now they cannot die quietly. No one corrected the translation. Helena had seen laws change before and knew most of them changed slowly, grudgingly, and only after someone paid a price. This time was no different. But the price had at least bought something solid. Not comfort, not justice in full. A foothold, a place where a name could stand before power decided whether it was convenient. The hearing did not end with applause. It ended with the sound of names. The council chamber remained connected to Aster Vale Memorial Plaza until the final entry was read. Delegates who had arrived expecting a security review sat through human names, Veari names, council technician names, refugee names, partial names, remembered names, and final signals translated into language. Some names were clear. Some were incomplete. One entry read, "Unknown dock worker, called Tavi by shelter survivors. Last seen holding the east door open." Another read, "3 voices from shelter row 9. Names not recovered. Final signal recorded." The memory wall displayed even those. It did not pretend uncertainty was the same as absence. Mara stood beside Helena in the chamber while her sister's name faded from a wall. She did not weep the way humans did. The Veari showed grief through stillness. Her tendrils stopped moving. Her breathing slits closed for a long moment, then opened again. "She is in the record now," Mara said. "Yes," Helena answered. "Will they keep her there?" "We will make them." Mara looked at her. "That is a very human answer. It is not always a comfortable trait." "No," Mara said, "but today it is useful." After the hearing, Elle's emergency ruling became a formal review. That next stage was slower, colder, and filled with legal language. But it began from a changed record. The names had already been heard, the raw archive was preserved, and civil stability closure could no longer seal Aster Vale in silence. The formal review took days of argument, then weeks of pressure from smaller systems that had watched the Aster Vale feed in silence. The Veari were not the only ones with missing names. Once the first list was protected, other lists arrived. A mining habitat from Salrith sent 42 names removed after a pressure collapse. A refugee convoy from Mirren Reach sent final signals never accepted because the passengers had no settled civic status. A hospital moon sent the memory chants of medical aides who died before their contracts were recognized. The council had built a clean archive by leaving difficult dead at the edges. Earth had not exposed all of it. Aster Vale had simply opened the first sealed door. Varesh Knoll survived the first inquiry, as powerful people often did. But his security proposal did not. Civil stability closure was rewritten. The phrase unregistered losses remained in old records, but it could no longer be used to remove a person from active casualty review when name evidence, witness memory, or a final signal existed. The new clause was entered into council disaster law under a long title no one outside the legal offices could remember. The communities at the edge gave it a shorter name, the Remembrance Clause. No verified name, witness memory, final signal, or physical evidence could be excluded because of political status. The language was not poetic. It did not need to be. It was a doorstop against erasure. On the last evening before Helena left Aster Vale, she returned to the plaza alone. The crowd was gone. The security lines had been removed. The memory wall stood quiet, its ring of light dimmed to a soft white glow. Maintenance crews had cleaned the stone, but here in there Helena still saw wax marks from memorial lights and the faint scuffs where thousands had sat down together. Elias Vorn found her near the central platform. "I owe you an apology," he said. "You were doing your job. I was trying to keep access. You were not wrong to worry." "No," Elias said, "but I was wrong about what would keep access worth having." Helena looked at the memory wall. "Earth will pay for this in other rooms," he said. "Varesh still has allies." "I know. Some council. Corridors may become harder for us." "I know. And if another disaster happens tomorrow, we will need those corridors." Helena turned to him. "Then we enter them as the people who read the names." Elias gave a tired laugh, not because it was funny, but because he had no argument left that could stand against it. Mara arrived a few minutes later with a small group of Veari. They carried no lights this time. Each wore a blue bead on one tendril. The Veari mark for a person returned to memory. Mara approached Helena and held out one bead. "It is not for wearing," Maris said. "It is for keeping." Helena accepted it carefully. "What does it mean?" "That someone who had power hurt someone who had none." Helena closed her fingers around the bead. "I did not do it alone." "No," Maris said, "but you did not look away first." They stood together before the memory wall. Tomas Reed, from the far edge of the plaza, quietly activated a final test of the archive link. Names shimmered once more across the ring. Not all of them, just enough to confirm the record would hold. Roland Solin appeared in white light. Mara bowed her head. Helena did too. She thought of the accusation that had started it all. Human grief as a security threat. Perhaps Varesh had been right in one way he had not met. Human grief was a threat to systems built on clean omissions. It threatened false peace. It threatened polite reports. It threatened every office that believed a person without status could be turned into a blank space. But did not threaten life. It protected the meaning of life after life was gone. That was why Earth remembered. Not to reopen every wound forever. Not to turn mourning into a weapon. Not to teach the living to hate. Earth remembered because someone had to stand at the edge of loss and say that no power, no report, no closure order, and no polished chamber had the right to decide which dead were allowed to remain real. The final name faded. The plaza returned to quiet. In the weeks that followed, council officers spoke of the Aster Vale incident in careful terms. They called it a procedural correction, an evidentiary expansion, and a necessary refinement of disaster. Law. They avoided saying that Earth had forced them to change. They avoided saying that a memorial had done what arguments alone could not. But in the outer settlements, where people knew what it meant to live below the line of political importance, they told the story more plainly. They said the Galactic Council called human grief a security threat. They said Earth brought no weapons. They said Helena Cross stood before the chamber with a list of names, a live feed of silent mourners, and the final voices of people the system had tried to smooth away. They said the council learned something it should have known long before. A civilization does not prove its strength by how cleanly it closes a file. It proves its strength by how carefully it carries the names it could not save. And from that day forward, when disaster teams entered ruined stations, broken settlements, and dark shelters at the edge of council space, the first question changed. Not civic status. Not political value. Not whether the dead would be convenient to count. The first question became simpler. Is there a name? Is there a witness? Is there a final signal? If the answer was yes, the record stayed open. That became the promise of Aster Vale. The dead would not be buried twice. The galaxy learned that grief was not a threat because humanity wanted revenge. Grief was a threat because humanity refused to let power decide who deserved to be remembered. Earth did not gather the living to start a war. Earth gathered them to speak the names that silence had tried to bury. And in that quiet light, before the Galactic Council, the dead were no longer numbers. They were workers, medics, neighbors, families, and people. From that day forward, every disaster record in the galaxy carried a new truth. If there is a name, it must be written. If there is a witness, they must be heard. If there is a final signal, it must not be erased. That became the Remembrance Clause. And it began because humanity understood one simple thing. A civilization does not honor the dead by hiding them. It honors them by making sure the living never forget. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who loves meaningful science fiction, and subscribe to the channel for more stories about humanity standing before the galaxy with courage, dignity, and heart. Thank you for listening. And remember, some names are too important to disappear.